And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Today we're talking the NHS, long COVID and breast screening. I have an interview with the Safeguarding Minister, Rachel McLean, about plans for a domestic abuse register. And as Baby P's killer is recommended for release, we're asking if the parole board is fit for purpose. Plus, I have a Real Me interview with the DUP's Ian Paisley. He tells me what it was like having a political colossus for a dad. First, it's the news with Tamsin.
Thank you, Gloria. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 12. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The UK has announced 14 additional sanctions designed to prevent companies and people from doing business with Russian state propaganda vehicles. It comes after Ukraine's president called for tougher action against Moscow. Volodymyr Zelensky received standing ovations as he addressed the Dutch and Australian parliaments this morning. He told them Russia poses a nuclear threat to the world.
Whatever is happening in our region because of the Russian aggression, what is destroying the lives of people, has become a real threat to your country and to your people as well. Because this is the nature of the evil. It can instantly cross any distance. Russian representatives, officials, official propagandists, they are openly discussing the possibility of using nuclear weapons against those who don't want to subdue.
In a rare public address, Britain's spy chief has said Vladimir Putin's advisers are scared to tell him the truth about the progress of his Ukraine invasion. Speaking in Australia, Sir Jeremy Fleming told the audience the Russian president has massively misjudged the resistance of the Ukrainian people and that Putin's overestimated the abilities of his military to secure a rapid victory.
We've seen Russian soldiers, short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders, sabotaging their own equipment, and even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. And even though we believe Putin's advisers are afraid to tell him the truth, what's going on and the extent of these misjudgments must be crystal clear to the regime.
The Foreign Secretary will urge India to join allies in opposing Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Liz Truss is in New Delhi for talks with her counterpart. It follows concerns the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is reluctant to publicly condemn Moscow's actions. India's abstained in a series of votes in the United Nations on the issue, and earlier this month it agreed to import 3 million barrels of heavily discounted Russian oil. An MSP is calling for 11,000 empty military homes to be used to accommodate refugees fleeing Ukraine. Gordon MacDonald has written to the Defence Secretary urging him to bring the unoccupied properties owned by the MOD back into use. The Home Office has announced 2,700 visas have so far been granted under the Homes for Ukraine scheme. In other news, households are expected to be more than £2,500 worse off due to the cost of living squeeze. New analysis from Labour combined tax hikes, food, energy and fuel prices, as well as mortgage costs. Launching its local election campaign, leader Sir Keir Starmer pledged to cut energy bills by up to £600, funded by a windfall tax on oil and gas companies.
Send a message to Boris Johnson and his Tories that they can't ignore. A message that Britain deserves better than their pathetic. Their miserable response.
Firefighters are tackling a large blaze at a business in Stretton in Derbyshire. They say the fire covers an area of 30 metres. Staffordshire police have closed nearby roads and drivers are being advised to avoid the area. No injuries have been reported. Thousands of pounds worth of goods have been reportedly stolen from David and Victoria Beckham's London mansion. It's believed the burglary happened late in the evening while they were both at home with their 10-year-old daughter at the end of February. Officers responded just after midnight on March the 1st. The Met Police say no arrests have been made and inquiries are continuing. From tomorrow, free COVID tests will no longer be available for most people under the government's new plans. Only hospital patients who have symptoms and people at high risk of contracting the virus will be eligible for free tests. The Department of Health says it'll still be able to ramp up testing if needed. And Royal Mail is phasing out its traditional first and second class stamps, replacing them with new barcoded ones. It's part of a modernisation drive boasting added security features. Customers will also be able to watch and share videos by scanning the barcodes in the Royal Mail app. Normal stamps will be valid until February next year. After that, though, you'll be able to swap them for the new versions. This is GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to the briefing with Gloria De Piero.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, the government says we have to learn to live with COVID and free lateral flow tests end for most people today. 1.5 million of us have to live with long COVID. I'll be discussing that with Shadow Public Health Minister Andrew Gwynne. The NHS is under pressure and under scrutiny with the pandemic causing a huge backlog for the treatment. I'll be talking with Conservative MP Steve Brine, who's working for better breast cancer screening. He lost his mother to the disease. Domestic abuse is largely hidden, but the government plans to help tackle it through a national register of domestic abusers. Safeguarding Minister Rachel McLean talks to me about that. The Parole Board plans to let baby P's killer out of jail, but Justice Secretary Dominic Raab aims to stop it and announced plans to overhaul the parole system yesterday. Is it fit for purpose? Plus, I have an exclusive interview with Ian Paisley, who tells me what it's like to grow up with a political giant as a father. Proposals to improve breast cancer screening have been made by a former health minister, Steve Brine. Breast cancer, if diagnosed early, is one of the most treatable cancers. Steve joins me now. Steve, good to see you. You're on a mission to improve breast cancer screening. Tell me what the proposals that you presented in Parliament yesterday are designed to do.
Well, I presented what you remember as a 10-minute rule bill, which is a way for backbenchers to flag issues of concern to them. And you remember when you were in the House, I was Public Health Minister and the Cancer Minister and spoke a lot about this subject, but I never spoke why. And yesterday I told the House why, which is, the tragic loss of my mother to it when she was just 52 years of age, so 4 years from where I am now. And, I've been working in this sector for a long time, and I've been working with breast cancer now for years. The pandemic, to say has not helped is an understatement. So we reckon that between March 2020 and April 21, because we suspended the breast screening programme, in the region of 930,000 fewer screenings took place. Now, suspending the breast screening programme was something that we must never do that again. But the consequences of it are that NHS England's own figures reckon that there are about 9,000 people living with an undiagnosed breast cancer. Now, anybody who has been through a breast cancer battle will know the potential danger that can spell. We've often said that early diagnosis is cancer's magic key, and that is true in all cancers, but it is particularly true in breast cancer because about 98% of women who have breast cancer detected at stage 1 will go on to live 5 years at least, and many of them a full, normal, healthy life. So what I presented yesterday was the breast screening, NHS breast screening programme bill, which was around learning from the pandemic, making sure that we catch up on these missed appointments. So, for instance, we cannot carry on with these open invitations to breast screening appointments. The evidence shows that when you're given a timed appointment, the take-up is much, much better than an open invitation that people say, well, that's something that I need to do, but I don't necessarily get round to. There was also elements in there about familial breast cancer. So, if you have breast cancer in your family, then we need to make sure that we are screening you more routinely through local breast screening services, not just through the national programme. And so it's a real sort of, I guess it's a superhuman effort to make sure that we catch up and make sure that we diagnose more breast cancers at stage 1, because it is a completely treatable disease, or almost completely treatable disease at that stage.
And you mentioned that it's not just a political mission, it's personal for you too. Just tell us a bit about what happened to your mum, who died at 52.
Well, yeah, I mean, like so many, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and battled, but it wasn't caught early enough. And so, as I said yesterday in the House of Commons, I was on my stag do in Wales, and I got a phone call very early in the morning to say I need to get back to my part of the world quick sharp. And and she passed away a couple of days later, which was 5 weeks before my wedding day. And you know what it's like, Gloria, in Parliament. People come in with different missions and different motivations, and there's no question that your life experiences shape you in the House and shape the things that you're interested in. And I chair the breast cancer all-party group with Sharon Hodgson, who you know well, for 5 years. And then I was incredibly fortunate when Theresa May asked me what I wanted to do in government. I said I want to be the cancer minister. She said, well, that's very specific. Most people normally just want to be a minister. I said, no, I want to be the cancer minister. And I specifically did, because I'm on a mission, and I was in office, and I still am now, to see that we diagnose more people early with cancer. And there's a lot of work to do is an understatement. The government's intentions are great in this place. There's a very good new cancer plan that Maria Caulfield, the cancer minister, published recently. I don't doubt their intentions on this, but I do think that we have a workforce challenge in the cancer community, for instance, which is making it very difficult. And I saw the Select Committee put something out in recent days on that.
Yes. And speaking about that, Professor Dame Jane Dacre, the ex-president of the Royal College of Physicians, when giving that evidence, said cancer services are facing overwhelming pressure, claiming that the NHS is unlikely to be diagnosing 75% of all cancers at stage 1 or 2 by 2028. That's the government goal. The experts are concerned it's not going to be made. Yeah, it's the government's goal. It's my policy. I wrote the policy, and I still think it's the right policy for the reasons that I said. Early diagnosis is the magic key. So that is tremendously important. It's also education. So the Touch, Look, Feel campaign around breast cancer has been incredibly effective in the past. When Jeremy Hunt and I were at the Department of Health, we instigated the FIT test, which is, to put it bluntly, poo in a post, which has been incredibly helpful at spotting bowel cancers. So there's lots of ways that we can do to detect. But I was also, the Minister for Prevention, and Matt Hancock, who was by then the Secretary of State, made prevention a real focus of his work. And obviously the pandemic then took over. But there's an awful lot more that we should and could be doing to prevent cancers. So it's around weight management. If we're not serious about tackling child obesity, then overweight children become overweight adults, and being overweight is one of the biggest risk factors in diabetes development and in cancer risk. And Cancer Research UK have been very, very clear about that. So it's about weight management, it's about diet. Of course, it's about smoking. I mean, smoking is the biggest preventable killer in this country today. We're not doing anything like enough to prevent smoking and to get smoking cessation services up and running. It's why I supported an amendment yesterday in the House, which unfortunately wasn't successful, around the polluter pays. It's a policy that I wrote when I was in office, about a levy on the tobacco companies to make them pay for smoking cessation services to get more people off the cigs. Interesting idea. We don't have much time, but I do want to use the benefit of your expertise to get your view on today being the last day of free lateral flow tests for everyone. Is that the right thing to do, or do you have concerns?
Generally, it's the right thing to do. I think the government, I noticed in recent days, have made a concession around health and care staff, which I think is the right decision. I mean, look, we spent £2 billion on testing in January. Last time I checked, the Exchequer was not flowing with money. I don't get many emails from constituents suggesting ways that I can, as you remember well, I don't get many emails from constituents suggesting ways that we can spend less money. They always want to spend more, and they want more money spent right now to help them with the cost of living. So as ever in government, you have to make a judgment call between, what is an effective spend versus the other calls on the public purse. We can't carry on like this forever. There are more. There's plenty of evidence now that seasonal influenza is more potent than COVID now, and so we wouldn't be testing routinely for influenza before this pandemic struck, and so there does come a point where we have to draw a line in the sand, with the caveat around health and care staff, which I think the government have wisely accepted a change on from lobbying they've had from a number of us.
Really interesting to talk to you. Before I let you go, Steve, you're not dressed like an MP today. We're all wondering why.
No. Well, I'm taking part in something called the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, which I suspect you remember, and it's a chance for MPs to embed in either the Army or the Navy or the RAF and just really understand the armed forces. And what we do is we visit different establishments and really understand what they do and the challenges that they have, and the purpose is to better inform debate in Parliament, and that's always a good thing. So that's why I'm playing soldiers today.
It certainly is a good thing. It's been great to have you on the show. We hope it's the first appearance of many. Thank you very much indeed, Steve Brine. Now, a PandO ferry worker has exclusively told GB News about the day he was sacked on the spot whilst on board a ship in Rotterdam. He says staff were ordered back to the UK on coaches with no food, water or even a ticket home. These new revelations come amid today's deadline for PandO workers to accept or decline their compensation packages. Our reporter Ali Costello has been speaking to the PandO employee and has this interview. We've kept his identity secret for legal reasons.
For staff on board the Spirit of France ferry, which was docked in Rotterdam, they were sacked via a written statement. They were told to get off the ferry and return back to the UK immediately. Many of the sacked employees had lived and worked on the ship for over 20 years. One sacked seafarer, Toby, not his real name, has told me exclusively what that day was like.
The captain said there was going to be a big announcement. He didn't sound quite right on the tannoy. Then the security guards started moving up, coming up the gangway onto the ship. They told everybody to go to the front bar, and all the security guards came along and blocked all the exits. And then some man in a suit read out his statement, and we were all told to pack our stuff, get off the ship as soon as possible, and they'd lead us to our cabins to pack. It's unbelievable. It felt like we'd been invaded by a load of pirates, to be honest with you. And then after that happened, they started bringing the crew on. I think they're all Colombians, and we're still at the front bar. That's the only time it nearly kicked off on our ship, because the crew was reacting bad enough from being sacked. And there you are. And then the agency label was taken upstairs, and our chef went upstairs to check on the staff food, and they were eating all of our staff food. Can you believe it? It's unbelievable. The way they treated us made you feel like you were worthless. We've worked our butts off basically for the last 2 years, and now it's coming to the end like at the end of a tunnel, and you're sacked. And you get repaid by being sacked on the spot and replaced by slave labour. That's what it is. Slave labour.
So why do you think it was done in the way that it was? Why do you think PandO ferries got security involved?
The security wasn't even there for our safety. It was in case we vandalised the ship, like the French did when they got sacked, because they smashed their ships up big time. But we're not like that. We're English. We're seafarers. On the gangway, we were asked our name and then handed an envelope with our redundancy offer on it. Even if I was offered my job back, I wouldn't take it if Peter Hebblethwaite was still there. The whole system's got to change. They've got to start caring for their workers more.
And what was the journey like back home after that experience? You must have all been so shocked.
We were put onto coaches home from Rotterdam. There was no food or water all day. We had a pregnant woman on our coach who was really stressed. We finally got to the Eurotunnel and there weren't even any tickets booked for us. Eventually, the bus driver paid for all of our tickets on a company credit card, and we all managed to get onto our competitor DFDS's ship, and they put the whole crew in the Premier Lounge, where we got free tea and coffee. They treated us better than our own company, really.
We put these allegations to PandO Ferries. In a statement, they did not deny that the sacked seafarers were not given food, water or a ticket to get home. A spokesperson has told us, "We profusely apologise for the difficulties people had during this journey. Due to reasons outside of our control, we weren't able to use the pre-arranged route, and alternative arrangements had to be made at the last minute." In response, Toby says he does not accept PandO's apology, and this statement sums up the way that they had treated their staff. He wishes instead to thank the great British public for all of their support. Ellie Costello, GB News.
After the break, we'll be hearing from the Safeguarding Minister, Rachel McLean, on the government's new plans to tackle domestic abuse. First, it's the weather.
Hello. Winter has most definitely returned. A cold feel out there today. Plenty of sunshine around, but some wintry showers will also continue. High pressure is moving in, bringing, as I say, plenty of sunshine. This weather front brought some wet weather overnight and a covering of snow in places. But around the high, the winds are coming down from the north, hence the cold feel, but also feeding in the moisture from the North Sea, bringing in showers down the eastern side, which will continue to have that wintry mix. Hail, sleet and some snow on the hills. A really strong, bitter wind across East Anglia and the southeast. And a few more flurries likely over the high ground across parts of Kent in particular. It does feel cold despite the sunshine further west. Temperatures only in single figures. Add on that wind and it feels much closer to freezing. As the showers keep coming in from the North Sea through the evening and overnight, it could well turn icy as temperatures tumble across northern and eastern Scotland, northeast England and southeast England too, with a continued threat of further snow over parts of Kent in particular, mostly over the hills. But as I said, it could be slippery almost anywhere where we see the showers coming in. Those showers will continue to be a mixture of sleet, snow and hail. A widespread frost, certainly in the west where we'll have largely clear skies. A dry, fine start to Friday for many. Plenty of sunshine, which will melt away any frost, but still one or two showers for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and certainly still more to come across parts of eastern England. And again, still that wintry mix, hail showers, some sleet and snow. And then we'll see some wet weather coming south across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, again with snow on the hills and mountains across western Scotland. Again, a cold feel on Friday with temperatures still in single figures and well below average for most. Temperatures falling away on Friday night, so again it could turn quite slippery out there, particularly where we've got this wet weather working southwards with some snow likely mixed into that over the hills across the southwest on Saturday morning. High pressure moving in there, so a lot of dry but cold weather this weekend.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. You can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're on the money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The government has announced a new register for domestic abusers. Perpetrators will now have to tell the police when changing address or opening a bank account with a new partner. Yesterday I spoke to Rachel McLean, the Safeguarding Minister. Minister, tell me about the domestic abuse register that you're seeking to introduce. What's the timeline? How will it work?
So we published a plan today, and it includes a huge number of measures to keep victims and survivors safe from domestic abuse, because we want to take the onus away from women having to flee that relationship and put the emphasis where it should be, on preventing perpetrators from actually abusing and attacking their partners. And that's why we're looking at this register, which will be modelled on what we've already got in the sex offenders register, but it's a much bigger scale. So the task now is to work with the operational partners, to work with the police. Of course, we want to do it as quickly as possible, but we need to get it right as well.
How will it work?
We will be working very closely with the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, with the police and with others to set out exactly how it will work.
But the principle is that if you have harmed, abused a former partner, then there will be an alert system. That's basically the principle of it.
Exactly that. We want to give women in this country that security and that safeguard to know that if they're getting into a new relationship with somebody, it's not potentially someone that's got a history. And that's why we're also expanding Clare's Law, which you will know has been on the statute book for a while. But we want to strengthen that and provide more protections and get it working faster and in a more convenient way for women.
You've also announced that you're going to consider plans to give women, people who are subject to domestic abuse, statutory time off work, like sick leave, considering, but when will that happen?
Yeah, so, I mean, you're right to challenge us on that. Of course, I want all this to happen really quickly. We have to work across government with the business department, and they will need to take feedback from the people that they work with. Look, they've been very clear that they want to introduce this. Again, it's about getting the details right. And I think it's really important to say that in the plan that we published today, there is a lot of detail and a lot of clear commitments that are already happening and coming into force straight away. And you've highlighted something that we're still working through some of the details on, but there's a lot of protections in the plan and funding, actually £230 million of new ring-fence multi-year funding to go to those all-important services.
And Ask Annie. Some people won't know what it is, but I know you want to expand it. Explain what it is and where it exists and where you want to extend it to.
Yeah, exactly. And this came in the pandemic because we knew that people were unfortunately suffering from domestic abuse. People were trapped in their homes and they couldn't get out. So the Ask for Annie scheme is where someone can go into a pharmacy, and it's a code word. If they ask for Annie, that means that they actually will get help and they'll get signposted to a support service or a place of safety by a trained professional. And we want to expand this. We know the scheme works really well. It's been welcomed by many victims and by the charities. And so we want to see that rolled out in job centres, and I'm working really closely with DWP to expand that as quickly as we can.
Many women still die at the hands of partners or former partners of men. Jess Phillips, the Labour MP, does something quite powerful, very powerful, every year in the House of Commons. On International Women's Day, she names the women who have lost their lives at the hands of men. Wouldn't it be great to see that from the government benches? The Home Secretary, perhaps?
And you're right to highlight the work that Jess does, and she's a long-standing campaigner in this area, and we agree that too many women are losing their life at the hands of men. Obviously not all of them are male perpetrators, but many of them are. I don't want to take away from Jess and the work that she's done, but it's important that we come forward with our response from the government benches as to what we are doing to prevent and tackle these types of awful murders. We don't want to see women being murdered. That's why we've introduced a plan today to strengthen the response and increase measures such as tagging, which often are able to protect women from dangerous perpetrators.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
After the break, we have an exclusive interview with Ian Paisley, the DUP MP, who says the government doesn't understand the devolved nations and has some strong words about the Conservatives' record on Northern Ireland. There's much more in that interview too. All of this and more after the news.
Thank you, Gloria. It's 12:30. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The UK has announced 14 additional sanctions against Russians, with broadcaster RT among those targeted for spreading propaganda. It comes after Ukraine's president called for tougher action against Moscow. Volodymyr Zelensky received standing ovations as he addressed the Dutch and Australian parliaments this morning. He told them Russia poses a nuclear threat to the world.
We know that our dream is undefeatable and undestructed, especially if we can count on the support of the free world, on your support, on your assistance. And like in the history that I just told, we needed not just in a couple of months, but we need it urgently now.
In a rare public address, Britain's spy chief has said Vladimir Putin's advisers are scared to tell him the truth about the progress of his Ukraine invasion. Speaking in Australia, Sir Jeremy Fleming told the audience the Russian president has massively misjudged the resistance of the Ukrainian people. The Foreign Secretary is urging India to join allies in opposing Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Liz Truss is in New Delhi for talks with her counterpart. It follows concerns the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is reluctant to publicly condemn Moscow's actions. And in other news, households are expected to be more than £2,500 worse off due to the cost of living squeeze. New analysis from Labour combined tax hikes, food, energy and fuel prices, as well as mortgage costs. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. The briefing with Gloria De Piero will be back in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The death of baby P horrified us all. A 17-month-old boy who died of over 50 injuries inflicted by his own mother. Now the parole board recommends her release. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab announced a shake-up of the parole board system yesterday and is trying to block her release. Conservative MP Alberto Costa has been demanding reform of the parole board in the light of the case of Colin Pitchfork, the double-child murderer who committed his crimes in what is now Alberto's constituency. Last year, Pitchfork was released and then jailed again. Alberto Costa joins me now. It is good to see you. Can I first get your reaction on that latest controversial recommendation by the parole board on Tracy Connolly?
Well, firstly, thank you, Gloria, for inviting me onto your excellent programme again to talk about this important matter. I fully agree with the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab. I think he's right to appeal the decision back to the parole board through what's called the reconsideration mechanism rule, which is a situation where the Justice Secretary can ask the parole board to think again. He can't veto the decision, he can't quash the decision, but he can ask the parole board to think again. And that's exactly what Mr. Raab said yesterday he would do. So I fully support the Justice Secretary. And I think it was notable that MPs across the House of Commons yesterday were broadly in support of Mr. Raab's actions. So it's now up to the parole board to reconsider their decision on the baby P crime.
And just tell us what you learned by campaigning against the release of that double-child murderer, Colin Pitchfork. That's when you really got involved in the campaign for change in how the system works. What did you learn along the way?
Well, you're right, Gloria. I learned a lot. Let's not forget the names of the two teenage girls that Colin Pitchfork brutally raped and murdered, Dawn Ashworth and Linda Mann, only 15 years old. It's still very raw in my constituency. And what I learned is that the parole board, certainly when it deals with these sorts of cases, tends to have an opaque process, such that you don't really know their line of thinking and how they come to make the decisions that they do. And what I've been arguing and what I've succeeded in further to yesterday's statement by the government is that the government proposed to do a number of things. Number one, they proposed to give victims a much greater say in the parole board process. Victims themselves will be able to take part in parole board hearings and will be able to ask questions. This is an enormous improvement and makes the system much more interactive and communicative with those that have suffered at the hands of these criminals. Secondly, and equally as important, is if the parole board makes a decision, as it did with Colin Pitchfork or with Tracy Connolly, in those circumstances with the top tier crimes, as the Justice Secretary said, the Justice Secretary proposes to restore a power that the Minister used to have, which is that if the parole board makes a decision which the Minister considers to be unreasonable or improper, the Minister will be able to veto that decision. Now, that doesn't mean that politicians will decide who stays in prison. It will still be for the independent parole board to make those decisions. But in those most egregious of cases, the most controversial ones, I think it's right that the Justice Secretary requests that he has the power to veto those most controversial decisions, and I'm fully supportive of that. That's been part of my campaign. If only he had that power last year when the parole board made another flawed decision to release Colin Pitchfork. And let's not forget, Colin Pitchfork was recalled into prison barely 2 months after he was released by the parole board.
You're right to mention those that died at his hands. Have the families of those victims, did they receive any sort of apology when he was put back in prison?
Well, again, this is part of the problems with the system. I've been demanding that there should be much better communication between victims and indeed victims' families. If the individuals have been murdered, then their families and closest friends ought to be able to receive proper and substantive information to help them understand the process and understand how the justice system is working. I'm still lobbying ministers on this. There's one or two things I can't disclose at this stage, Gloria, but I hope later to come onto your programme to reveal one of those categories of people that I think ought to receive information about an individual that might be released. And when the Justice Secretary puts his proposals before the House of Commons in the form of a bill, the opportunity will arise to suggest amendments to that bill to ensure that all those issues that I've been campaigning on, that I've discussed with you on your programme before, that viewers have listened to before, that all of those things can be taken into account, and that we return the parole board into a body which must have as its number one objective not the upholding of a prisoner's rights, but the protection of the public. That's what the parole board is about. It's there to decide whether it can release someone only if it's convinced that public safety is of paramount importance and protected. And that's what we need to restore.
Alberto Costa, Conservative MP, it's always a pleasure to have you on the programme, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you. Now it's time for my latest Real Me interview. I talked to Ian Paisley, DUP MP for North Antrim, about what it was like to grow up with a political giant as his father. Ian Paisley, you are the son of former DUP leader from 1971 to 2008, Ian Paisley. What is it like growing up with a dad who was a political giant?
Yeah, when you reflect on it, it was crazy. But for me, my dad was just a normal, really loving, kind dad. I have a twin brother, 3 older sisters, and Dad was the life and soul of our house, and he looked after us really well. And that was the kind of dad I grew up with. He wasn't always there. He was in jail a few times. He was not always there to take us to school, but when he was there, he was very compassionate and very caring, and taught me an awful lot about life and gave those life lessons all the time. But on the other side of it, what people saw was this larger-than-life, charismatic, political and religious figure who dominated Irish and British politics for near on 35, 40 years. And I think some people went, God help us kids. And others went, wow, aren't they incredibly fortunate? And for me, who love politics, to be in that environment, to almost have a ringside seat at a heavyweight boxing championship and see how all the moves are pulled was a real blessing and a real opportunity.
You said that he gave you lots of life lessons. Is there one in particular that you attribute to him?
2. First of all, my dad always said, remember son, it's not a dress rehearsal. Every single day is for real. Live it for real every single day. You can't come back and relive yesterday. So make sure you live it absolutely. Dress rehearsal, no regrets, every single day the way you should. And the other thing, he was always fascinated with time. Indeed, he put a massive clock on the front of his church with the words, time is short. And he said to me, remember, time is short. That's only how you use your time that will really matter. The only thing I own, the only thing I possess is my time. Everything else is fleeting. So use it wisely. And indeed, to that, I carry one of his watches every day with me. All the time, I always carry one of his pocket watches, which reminds me of that. When I'm in Parliament or I'm doing something, I always look at and remember, time's short. Live it true.
It's very moving. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess when you have such a leading political figure as a dad, you can go one of 2 ways. You can rebel and think, I want nothing to do with that. You didn't. You chose to follow in his footsteps. Was that always a certainty for you? Did you always know I am following in his footsteps?
Yeah, I always kind of had the thing of, yes, I'm following, doing what my dad did. But my dad was first and foremost a pastor. You know, that's how, if you ask me who was That politics was just something was kind of everyone else saw. So my twin brother went into the ministry. We used to joke, you take the church, I'll take the party, you know. So I did follow him in, though it wasn't really what he would have wanted me to do. I think that Dad would very much probably like both his sons to be in the ministry, but that wasn't for me. I followed him into that. You know, in politics, Gloria, I mean, name recognition is exceedingly important, and I had that built in, not only as a surname, but also as my first name, a Christian name. And so I had that benefit, but as you know, you have to want to do this job. He certainly didn't corral me into it. He tried to encourage me to look at other things. But I had the bug, I had the disease, I wanted to do it. And I really love doing it. I really love politics. And I think I have something to contribute. I think I can articulate a case for the people who sent me to Parliament and previously sent me to the Northern Ireland Assembly. And I think that people need strong advocates, dedicated advocates, and people who will work for them. And I picked up that lesson from him, that, you know, it's about all the service you put in that ultimately provides in hard times for those people and then for you. And I really enjoy that service part of politics.
You have strong Christian beliefs too, despite not going into the ministry.
Yeah. The lay members of the church are far more important, you know.
Does your faith ever conflict with politics or put pressure on politics or cause difficulties in politics?
I think people will always want to see that and always say, oh, he's saying that because he's a Christian or because he's got those particular views. I think we have to get to a society where it becomes easy to say difficult things to each other, but with respect. You know, and at the moment we have a society where it's quite difficult to say difficult things because people either on social media take it up wrong, or they twist it or turn it or try to portray you as a hate figure or in a particular stereotypical way. And I think we have to get to the point where we can say, and Christianity and some of the views that Christians hold can be difficult. And I think we have to get to the point where we are able to say those difficult things respectfully and understand them to each other. But yes, of course, there's conflicts. And it's about balancing that conflict. You know, Christ said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God. So there is a way of dividing it and doing it right. But God is ultimately king of the kingdom that I'm in. And I have to ultimately bow to him and to his sovereignty and to no one else's. I had a constituent in my office last Friday, and they brought their kid in with them. They picked them up from school, and we were chatting about their things. And I have a lovely portrait on the wall when I got the honour of meeting Her Majesty the Queen. And the guy said to me, look at that, to his daughter. There's a picture of Mr. Paisley with the Queen. And I was very impressed, and I took it off and I showed the kid the picture. And then her father said, but you know, you can meet the King of Kings, and I think Mr. Paisley knows the King of Kings as well. And I think that's, you know, it's a beautiful lesson that actually, you know, whilst we honour people here on earth, we have a greater purpose, and it's a purpose for our souls and for other people's souls, and we should never lose sight of that.
Going back to, I noticed that you worked for your dad for a bit after you left university. That can't be easy, can it?
No. Very demanding, very demanding. I mean, my dad would do 6 people's work in one day. You know, he was a very, very hard worker. He had that kind of work ethic about him. And he could achieve so much. I mean, he published something like 40, 50 books in his life. He edited a magazine every month. He edited a local newspaper. He was a minister for religion. He was constantly on the go, but he got things done. And he didn't leave things undone. And I think that was a great example to see a boss like that. And he expected me to pull my weight and to earn my crust, and probably to do slightly more than everyone else to show that I wasn't there because of favour, that I was there to earn my keep. And I think that's, again, a very positive lesson that, you know, because people will always say, oh, you're only there because of your father or your mother. But if you can show that you've got value, can add value, and are a hard worker and put the hours in, I think people see that and see that you actually are committed to the issue. And just because you've had the privilege of who your parents happen to be, doesn't mean to say you can throw that, or that can be thrown to the side. But yes, he was a very demanding boss. I loved working for him. I mean, it was a buzz every single day. I got to meet some fascinating people, to set up some fascinating meetings. Remember in 2006, we were in the United States of America. We'd heard that Donald Trump was interested in investing in Northern Ireland, and we knew that he wanted to invest in the North Antrim coast, which is my father's constituency. So he said to me, get me a meeting with him. I went, right, okay. So we literally phoned people till we got a number. I got a meeting set up with him, and we went in and had the meeting with Donald Trump to see would he invest in Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, invested in Aberdeenshire, but we got in, we got round the table, we talked. We actually created a relationship there, and life is about relationships, and that relationship has lasted and was a very beneficial and helpful relationship, even though we didn't invest in that occasion.
Do you know, just listening to you, because very few people have what you have, like, you know, political giants as their dads. I just wonder, do you always, are you left wondering or thinking, I can never be as great as my dad?
No, because he wasn't like that. My dad was, even though he was rumbustious and outspoken, he was incredibly humble. And he didn't, whilst he was self-aware, and self-awareness is very important, he never had the view of, there's the mark, you make it. His view was, you do it your own way. Be yourself. Imitations, clones don't work. If I was a clone of my daddy, everyone would see through me. If I was trying to imitate him, and I've seen people trying to imitate him in their political careers, it doesn't work. But I can learn from him. And I think the life lessons learned and applied your way are the best way to show flattery to someone, but also to respect the lessons that they've given you.
Let's just finally talk about today's politics. Your natural political allies in Westminster is the Conservative and Unionist Party.
So they say, Gloria. But we've always had a better deal from Labour. Anytime we've had a Labour Prime Minister or a Labour Secretary of State, they've understood Northern Ireland usually better. Their bark has been worse than their bite, you might say, whereas we've always kind of had the fear, will Labour take us in a particular direction, closer to United Ireland? But their bark about that and their actual bite has been very, very different. Yes, the Conservatives call themselves the Conservative and Unionist Party, but I believe that the Conservative Party today is becoming more and more an English nationalist party that doesn't really understand what's going on in Scotland, certainly in Northern Ireland and in other regions. And we've got to, and I've got to try and encourage them and educate them and help them to understand. Yeah, Northern Ireland's 2-3% of the whole of the UK, but this is what we really believe. And we're not little Englanders trying to be little Englanders. We're proud Northern Ireland people who have an identity of our own, and you've got to understand it and govern on that basis.
Is the door always open for you? I assume that whenever you want an audience at number 10 with the Prime Minister, you can get one, right?
I usually can, yeah.
So how can you persuade him of the merits of your argument?
Yeah, well, the current Prime Minister, as you know, and I mean, Boris Johnson has extremely important skills and very, very helpful skills. Despite all of the criticisms he has pulled in so many other directions, and pulling him in and getting him and giving him a one-liner or 2 lines on the Northern Ireland situation that he then can grasp and understand and take forward. That's always key. It's not always easy. Because he's, as I say, he's pulled in so many different directions that it's not always possible to get that attention span on the Northern Ireland situation. And I have enough self-awareness to know that Northern Ireland is not taking up his attention. You know, so many other things are. So we've got to do things to draw his attention before things go bad again in Northern Ireland. And I would far rather he gets it now than reacts to a situation.
Do you trust him to ultimately resolve the Northern Ireland protocol?
I don't trust anyone in politics. I've become really sceptical. You know, and I think that it's foolish to put your trust in people. We can only trust the people that they will, you know, hopefully elect sensible people, and then that we can trust those people to respond positively to the messages and the political policies that we have. But the idea that I'm trusting this particular politician, I think those days have long since gone.
Brilliant to listen to you. Really fascinating. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You can catch up on all my big political interviews on the Real Me podcast. I speak to MPs to find out what makes them tick and get to know the person behind the politics, and the latest episode is out now. You can listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Just search for GB News. Thanks very much for getting in touch today. On the parole board and the likely release of Baby P's killer, Keith emails to say if the death penalty was reinstated, these monsters, then you and we wouldn't be listening to this conversation. Karen says, ridiculous decision. Did you know there are 246 members of the parole board, supported by a staff team of approximately 120 civil servants? Somehow the public should have a say in who and who is not released. And on proposals for a domestic abuse register, Ron says, I'm really so happy to hear of the reform for domestic abuse register. My wife suffered within a former relationship, and I witnessed my own mother within the same situation as a young man. That is all from me. You've been watching The Brief with me, Gloria De Piero. I'm off for a couple of weeks, back on Easter Monday. Arlene Foster will be here tomorrow at noon. Up next, it's On the Money with the wonderful Alistair Stewart. But now, here is your weather.
Hello. Winter has most definitely returned. A cold feel out there today. Plenty of sunshine around, but some wintry showers will also continue. High pressure is moving in, bringing, as I say, plenty of sunshine. This weather front brought some wet weather overnight and a covering of snow in places. But around the high, the winds are coming down from the north, hence the cold feel, but also feeding in the moisture from the North Sea, bringing in showers down the eastern side, which will continue to have that wintry mix. Hail, sleet and some snow on the hills. A really strong, bitter wind across East Anglia and the southeast. And a few more flurries likely over the high ground across parts of Kent in particular. It does feel cold despite the sunshine further west. Temperatures only in single figures. Add on that wind and it feels much closer to freezing. As the showers keep coming in from the North Sea through the evening and overnight, it could well turn icy as temperatures tumble across northern and eastern Scotland, northeast England and southeast England too, with a continued threat of further snow over parts of Kent in particular, mostly over the hills. But as I said, it could be slippery almost anywhere we see the showers coming in. Those showers will continue to be a mixture of sleet, snow and hail. A widespread frost, certainly in the west where we'll have largely clear skies. A dry, fine start to Friday for many. Plenty of sunshine, which will melt away any frost, but still one or two showers for Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and certainly still more to come across parts of eastern England. And again, still that wintry mix, hail showers, some sleet and snow. And then we'll see some wet weather coming south across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, again with snow on the hills and mountains across western Scotland. Again, a cold feel on Friday with temperatures still in single figures and well below average for most. Temperatures falling away on Friday night, so again it could turn quite slippery out there, particularly where we've got this wet weather working southwards with some snow likely mixed into that over the hills across the southwest on Saturday morning. High pressure moving in there, so a lot of dry but cold weather this weekend.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no